What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today's Best Served Podcast 394, and I'm talking to Kyle and Sarah of Zelnik International on 3 keys to negotiating your restaurant lease. This is an exciting show because I fucked up the whole real estate process when I was the chef owner. I've learned a lot and trying to impart that knowledge. And somebody like Kyle, who also has signed leases, been the chef owner, and is now on the real estate side to help develop kind of emerging brands into regional, national. I think has a lot of great insights, plus just one of the best restaurant advice, TikTok, Reels, personalities in the entire industry. And so really excited about that. We're going to talk about these 3 keys. I'll bring these up and then we'll bring in Kyle. We're going to talk about personal guarantees. We're going to talk about security deposits, and we're going to talk about lease assignment. These are 3 very crucial things, as well as we did 6 questions with Kyle and Sarah. So make sure in the comments you get into that link so that you can check out a lot of way more in-depth information on what it's going to take to navigate a lease today in today's landscape, including some COVID expectations, relationships with landlords, and more. All right, no further ado, let's get Kyle and Sarah in here. Kyle, good to see you.
Hey, Chef, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
This was so necessary for us. We've been engaging, interacting, doing stuff on TikTok all over the place. Your show as well. I didn't even mention, the National Restaurant Owners Podcast. Like, you're killing the game, and really appreciate you're bringing so much perspective from so many different angles, which I think is really important. And then and restaurant and real estate, you've really found that groove. You're challenging both the restaurant industry as well as the real estate industry, and I really like that. We need to come closer together because we've been pretty divergent for quite a while. So real quick, just give us kind of the headlines, of the work that you do with Zelnik National.
So yeah, I've been a restaurant operator, and now I am a commercial real estate advisor, working with emerging restaurant brands across the country, essentially helping them build out their real estate pipelines wherever they want to go, finding their ideal customer and finding markets and areas of opportunity for them to run their most successful business.
Yes, like you're a translator. I find myself feeling like that's my role as well. So often is you speak restaurant and you speak real estate, and those are very different languages. And too often we nod our heads and expect that the other side of the conversation understands what we're talking about. We don't, and we kind of fake it till we make it sometimes, and it leads to a lot of issues. Let's get right into it. Let's bring as much value as possible over the next 12 minutes or so. Personal guarantees. What does that mean, first of all? And what's the expectation, and what do you want to see restaurants doing more of with personal guarantees?
So a personal guarantee is when the landlord's looking for you personally to guarantee the performance of the lease. So when you see that number, realize that they're asking you to pay for that total sum, regardless of how many years you signed for, 5, 10, 15, or 20, whatever it is, if things go south. So you don't ever want to sign a personal guarantee. And if you're forced to sign a personal guarantee, there are ways to make it more tolerable for you. But understand that if you open up day 1 and day 31, you're like, I can't do this. A personal guarantee says, you still owe us this money.
Oof.
And if you don't pay us, they're going to go after your personal assets. So a lot of first-time operators will say, well, I have an LLC or I have an S corp. Well, that doesn't mean shit because you don't have any assets to it. It goes right to you personally. So
this is them coming for your car, your house, right? Like that's the nightmare scenario.
Yeah. And they're going to always ask for a personal guarantee so understand this too about a personal guarantee. If you're not the investor, they're going to ask the investor to have the personal guarantee because they want the person with the money. So just be aware that this is a huge, huge point in your lease that you need to really, really try to avoid and try to negotiate it down to something more tolerable for you.
Yeah. And do we actually have leverage for that? Will somebody sign a lease with somebody if there isn't a personal guarantee in place? How does that work?
So the best thing that you can do, or the best option, is to say you want it to burn off. So if you say, hey, okay, you want a full personal guarantee, say I will guarantee the first 3 years. And every year that I I'm a good tenant. I pay my rent on time. There's no issues. Whatever those guidelines are, you can outline the specifics. We burn a year off until we're down to what's called a 1-year rolling guarantee, which means at no point, like regardless of when you decide to shut the doors or have to get out of there for whatever reason, you would only ever be liable for the maximum of a year. But also, if you're 6 months in to that calendar year, or whatever time frame you specify, you'll only be liable for 6 months. So you're saying, hey, I'll give you the guarantee for the first 5 years. I get it. You got some concerns there. I'll do that, but then it's going to burn down after that period of time, 3 to 5 years, whatever you can negotiate. But if they want it, that's a good middle of the road place to end up.
I like it. And you talk about everything is negotiable, and something that this and everything we're talking about, everything you talked about in the article as well, everything is negotiable. And sometimes we think, oh, I don't know, I've never done this before, they've done this a bunch of times, I'm just not going to make waves, I'm not going to ask stupid questions, I'm going to fake it till I make it. So appreciate that, because personal guarantees, and you see that across the board, you see, your broadline vendors expecting personal guarantees and things like that. Just don't sign them. Don't get overconfident, like, I got this, like it's never going to come up. Don't put yourself in the potential position at all. So appreciate that. Security deposits. So it's a big one. It's a cash flow business. We undercapitalize almost every single project. Again, something we talk about in the article. Security deposits. What do we need to know, and how do we need to attack this?
So security deposit and personal guarantees are two big ones, right? And to me, they kind of go hand in hand. Landlord may ask for a startup restaurant. I've seen them ask for a year security deposit.
Damn.
And doesn't mean they're going to get it, right? But they're going to say, I don't know you. I don't know your investor. You say he's a restaurant guy. Is he going to be here every day? Or is she going to be working with you? I don't know what that relationship is like. So I want some assurance. Well, if you say, well, hey, let's talk about the personal guarantee here. If I'm personally guaranteeing the lease, like let's say you can't get out of it, why do you also need 6 months security deposit?
Right.
Like what's the story here? So what's important? What's your biggest concern? So we spoke earlier in having that conversation, like get to their pain points. They may be cash strapped, right? They're not going to say that, but they need some assurance from you. So if it is similar to the personal guarantee situation, have the security deposit burned down. So if I perform well, right, let's burn it down to a year, or down to 1 month. Let's burn this down to 1 month over X amount of time based on the performance. Again, those are the conversations that you have to have as a startup, showing that you're willing to give and understand that, hey, for all you know, this is the one property that they own, right? If it's not a huge corporate landlord, and this is how they feed their family, right? And if they put the time and effort and they pay somebody like me to find you to put in that space, they're already out of pocket a significant amount of capital. So they want some assurance that if things go south, that they're not going to be left high and dry.
Yeah, they took out a big loan potentially as well. So I think, it makes sense there. And just hold on to as much cash as you can if you're an operator. That's like the way to go. You talk about cash reserves again in the article. I'm plugging this article hard. It was really good. There's so much stuff that we need to know about restaurant real estate. We didn't even touch, a tenth of it. So lease assignment. This really important, something we never talk about in restaurants. I always think of, begin with the end in mind, Stephen Covey. And it's so important because we're like, I'm just thinking about having a successful restaurant. And then what? And then what? Are you passing this to your family? What are you doing? What's the exit strategy? And it's like such a tech startup mentality. And we don't really have that. For you're talking about exit strategy a lot. So talk about lease assignment. What does that mean? First of all, making sure that you understand the lease assignment, and then what's the long tail there? What do we need to be doing?
So the assignment of the lease means what happens if you want to sell this? You get sick of the business, something, tragic happens in your family. You can't run the business anymore. It's just not successful for whatever reason. That section of the lease is going to say what your options are. Now, it can be anything from you can assign it, or you can assign it to whoever you want and anywhere in between. But it's typically phrased something along the lines of, we'll say lease assignment. It could say assignment and subletting. Like, can you sublet to somebody else? That's a whole other scenario. But essentially, you want to say, all right, I'm going to get out of here. I have a great relationship with you. Mrs. Landlord, and I'm going to get you somebody just like me to take over this space. Same financials, same history, same track record. Doesn't have to be the same type of concept, but a quality candidate as for a tenant for you to review. Now, what they're going to say is, cool, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I still want to have the final sign off. So the landlord will approve that. They're going to say, okay, we're going to approve it. Now, one thing you have to be careful of in there is you need to put a phrase in, or your attorney's going to have to put in a phrase that says not to be unreasonably withheld or delayed. Because let's say you're up against it, right? So financially, you burn through your excess cash. You have, just imagine the worst possible scenario, and the landlord is like, hey, you know what, Kyle? Absolutely, you can present some tenants to me. I'd love that, but I'm going away for 2 months.
Oh wow!
And I won't be able to review them until I get back. Whatever the case is, or they just don't respond to you, right? They might be out-of-state landlord. They might be who knows what. Unreasonably withheld or delayed is a phrase that says they're going to make this a priority, right? And it's a middle ground because you're not saying they have 30 days to nail it down or whatever. But again, it goes back to that relationship, and it's everything. So like, if you're both on the same page with what you want, they're going to want somebody else in there too if you're not able to carry it. So just make sure the language is clear. And again, if you don't get it, have your attorney outline it for you in bullet points, exactly what it is, and make sure you're clear on what you have to do there.
And so this would be for subletting. You're bringing somebody else in. You're potentially selling the business, right, to somebody else. Would it be for that as well? And then the potential to transfer the lease to somebody else, all of which likely that the landlord would want to have some kind of insight or oversight of. Are those the scenarios that are most likely to occur for a restaurant? Now, a lot of times this is like you're protecting yourself from a really devastating, you have to get out of the business for whatever reason. This could also be, we did it. We had 10 great years. We put the kids through, school, whatever it might be. And now it's time for us to go RVing in California and Mexico, whatever. And so now you want to sell the business, and you have, it's got good equity and all that. So does it protect against that? Is that a different process altogether? What's that look like?
No, so assignment is the term that you would use if you're actually getting somebody else in there to take over a new lease. If you're subletting, I'm glad that you mentioned this, because if you're subletting, in most cases, you're still on the hook.
Right.
So the landlord may say, yeah, you can sublet it to these guys, but if they don't perform, everything reverts back to the original lease. So your security deposit, your whatever your guarantee situation is, you have to pay the rent if they don't pay it. That's just the way that goes. So if you're going to go RVing, and that's going to be your plan, you better make sure that the group that just took over your space is good to go, because otherwise you're going to be paying for it while you're RVing, which probably not going to happen. You're going to have to cancel that whole shit and come back into the restaurant business and start running it again. So just be careful who you sublet to. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Because you're not going to be able to get out of being on the hook for that. Again, you could say, hey, I want them to sublet for a year, and if they do perform by these metrics, then you'll give them a new lease. But in most cases, if you're a quality restaurant, they're not going to let you off the hook that easy.
Yeah, and it goes right back to what you said in the first one, the personal guarantee, security deposit. Make sure that you protect yourself, because if you are successful over 10 years, you want to make sure that you have a clean exit there and you're not still liable and on the hook for something you signed 10 years ago. So, Kyle, really, really appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Course,
and anybody watching this, again, the article, click in the comments. You're going to get a lot of value out of that if you're looking to negotiate a lease for the first time ever, renegotiate a lease that you currently have, look at an expansion. I think is all going to be really valuable and important. And we're going to be doing some stuff on TikTok as well. So if you're checking this out and you don't follow at Best Served Podcast or at Chef Jensen Cummings or at Kyle and Sarah, go check it out, because we're going to get into it a little bit. We got a lot of work to do, Kyle.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that too, man. That'll be fun.
All right. Be good. Cheers.
All right.
All right, everybody. That is it for this episode. Once again, that was Best Served Podcast 394. Kyle and Sarah of Zelnik National on 3 keys to negotiating your restaurant lease, as well as just, again, Kyle is just such a wealth of knowledge and super fucking entertaining on TikTok. And if you're not on there following him and you were in the restaurant industry, go do it now at Kyle and Sarah. That's it. Appreciate you all. Cheers.